Ladies and gentlemen, it is another fine day. A fine day for a Diablo patch. Yes, today, Diablo version 2.0.5 came out pretty much without much fanfare at all. Yet, it seems to have quite a few changes, mostly in the character department, which means it's probably a fairly small patch, but a lot of number tuning nonetheless. Now, before I continue on to the actual patch notes, I want to say there's something about the last few patch notes that Blizzard has put out that I've really liked, especially since I don't like to just read off patch notes. I like to kind of give some opinion pieces here and there when I feel it's appropriate. And one of the things that they're doing lately, especially when it comes to class balance changes, is they're including their philosophy behind why they are making certain changes. So we're not just getting this number X has been increased by 3, Y has been decreased by 2. We're actually getting a, hey, here's what we're thinking. This is what we're trying to do. And what that does is that allows us to kind of take a look at some of the changes in context and allows us to kind of say, okay, well, if that's what you're trying to do, maybe you might not have wanted to consider this change instead of done this. And then that allows us to give more valuable feedback to Blizzard. Okay, there are two significant known issues for this patch that I think you should be made aware of before I go much further as well. First and foremost, there is an issue with crafted set items. Apparently, they are rolling with plus skill damage for other classes. Now, you still have a chance to roll for your own class, but the restriction that your class that will only have your class specific types of plus % damage apparently has been shut off for this patch for some reason. It is known they are working on it, but unfortunately at this time we don't know when that's going to get fixed. The other issue appears to be that there is a crashing issue with Nephilim Rifts, and Blizzard is working on that as well, and they have offered a workaround for the time being. If you go into your options, locate the speaker setup menu, and select stereo, then hit accept, it's supposed to reduce this from happening. Now, it sounds like it may still happen. I haven't been able to actually get in and test some things yet, but I want you guys to be aware of that. Know that this is out there and that they are working on it. Alright, let's start off with the general changes. First and foremost, the radius of the strength and numbers buff, which is the buff you get when you play with other people, which is a thing that increases your experience, your gold, magic find. It's been increased from 100 yards to 200 yards. Considering 100 yards is already off the screen, I do believe, it means you should be able to be a couple screens away from other players before it starts dropping off. So that's kind of a more quality of life change, which is nice to see. Gold find on items is now going to stack multiplicatively with gold find bonuses provided from the game difficulty. So this is going to have the net effect of increasing gold rewards that players will see on higher difficulties or with lots of gold find gear. They give you a pretty decent example here where they say, suppose you're on Master, which is a 200% gold find increase, and you've got a 50% gold find awarded from the items you're wearing. So for an example, a pile of gold might drop for 50 gold. With the difficulty bonus increase, it becomes 150. With the 50% gold find on top of that, that 150 will then become 225. So I want to let you know that ultimately gold rewards are going to be increasing. Now this is going to be stacked up with some other changes, some nice quality of life changes, which will happen later in the crafting section, where some prices have been reduced to try and help people out with their gold flow. Not only are we getting this multiplicative buff and some reduced prices, but the 300% gold find cap that was applied to items and Paragon points has been completely removed. So now you can stack that gold find as high as you want to. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be happy to hear that the vote kick system has also received some changes. It's going to be a lot less restrictive now. Vote kicking is now available after you've been in a game for 2 minutes, which is down from the previous 5. Killing a champion or rare pack will no longer disable the vote kick system for 15 seconds. However, you will still get a lockout after a boss kill. Except for boss kills used to be 3 minutes, it's now the 15 seconds that the elites used to be. Some additional restrictions were also relaxed, but there is a known issue that the tooltips are not going to reflect these changes. And lastly, in the general section, it appears Tyrael is learning how to handle his food a little bit better because he will now chat a little bit less about his poor eating habits. Alright, now technically in the patch notes, the class skills comes next, but I kind of want to go over those last. So we'll do those after the rest of the changes. So let's move on to what's happening with items. Now, I normally don't talk about item changes when I go over patch notes, simply because a lot of the items I really haven't seen or haven't dealt with, so I really don't know how to compare them. But there's a few things in here that I think are pretty nice, and I kind of want to go over. Alright, let's start with the legendary item, the Cinder Switch, which has a legendary affix of a 20 to 50% chance to cast a fireball when attacking. Now, apparently this fireball's proc used to do a flat damage, and it sounds like it was around 750 damage at level 70, which is really not a lot at that level. So now the fireball proc is going to deal 250% weapon damage, so it's actually going to scale. So I like to see that they're doing that. They're making it so that these items which have a proc, that may not be the most interesting proc, but they're trying to make it more relevant. Barbs and monks who may have been interested in getting Isfan's paired blades that were just recently put into the game, you might want to know that an issue has supposedly been fixed that was preventing them from dropping for those two classes. Some very nice changes to the puzzle ring. I've actually had a few people that I've known with puzzle rings, and it's been a pretty neat little item. So you get this little goblin that walks around, picks up White's items, and eventually will give you either a rare or a legendary. Well, they've changed it up just a little bit. The goblins have been scouring Sanctuary for better loot for you. The legendary drop chance on the goblin has been doubled from what it was before, and rare items dropped will always have 6 affixes now. So the goblin will always give you items that are on the higher end of the pool there, simply because you're going to have the maximum number of fixes, and of course legendaries will happen more often. There apparently were some issues with the counter as well when he was picking up items. It apparently reset on death, act transitions, and unequipping the item. Those have been fixed, so you can unequip it, you can die, you can go through acts, and the counter should remain where it was, so it will always keep track of how many white items you've picked up. The only thing it doesn't, that it will reset on, is changing the game. If you change the game session, it will reset. Also, a sound will play whenever he reaches his maximum stacks and he drops an item, so now you will know for sure when the goblin has given you something. If you are a fan of thorn builds and you have the sanguinary Vam braces, you might want to know that the thorns damage dealt by these braces are now going to benefit from your primary stat damage at a 25% rate, as normal thorns damage does. But because of this, since it's a buff to you, the radius has been reduced on that proc from 25 yards to 15. Wizards who may have been looking at Tasker and Theo but turned off by the fact that it didn't affect your Hydra will now know that Tasker and Theo, the legendary gloves which increase attack speeds of pets, will now affect Hydras. Demon Hunters. Haha, I like this one. There was a bug fix for Wind Force. There was an issue that was preventing the knockback effect from activating the Strong Arm Bracer's legendary power. Basically what this means is Wind Force has one of those nice secondary affixes. It doesn't show up in orange for whatever reason, but it causes a knockback chance. And the Strong Arm Braces, if you're not familiar with those, gives the enemy an increased damage intake, kind of like Mark for Death or something like that. They get knocked back and then they take more damage for a few seconds. This amount of damage increase is not small. It's not insignificant. So apparently Wind Force was not causing that to happen. I didn't know that, and I'm glad to know that it's been fixed, because that's actually something I'm using a combo on my Demon Hunter. So I've been indirectly buffed. Thank you, Blizzard. General changes to some of the offhand items for some classes has occurred here. They are under each of the individual class-specific items, but I want to kind of mention this as a whole. Apparently some of the offhand items were not rolling with proper stats, and they've all been kind of low, especially when it comes to legendaries. So a lot of the offhand items are supposedly improved, and it's looking like a lot of them are going to be retroactive. So starting with the Crusader, they say the level 70 legendary Crusader shield should roll with higher block amount ranges than the level 70 magic and rare Crusader shields. So legendary shields should automatically have a higher pool to pull from for block amount and things like that. So if you ever got a legendary shield and you thought, hey, those stats are really nice, but the block amount or block chance and things like that were terrible, that should happen a lot less now. The change should affect existing legendary Crusader shields, so you might want to go in and take a look and see how that's affected you. Speaking of Crusaders, Fate of the Fell, which is one of the more sought-after two-handed flails, which allows you to have 2 additional Rays of Heaven Fury. Apparently there was an issue preventing the multiple Heaven's Furies from stacking their damage, so that's been fixed. So you should do a lot more damage now with Fate of the Fell. Hellskull, a legendary Crusader shield, which used to remove the Heavenly Strength movement penalty, has been changed. It now increases your damage by 10% if you're wielding a two-handed weapon. Reason for this is the movement penalty for Heavenly Strength on Crusaders has actually been removed, and we'll get to that on the patch notes. So at least you should know now that that legendary is not made useless by that change. The embodiment of the Marauder set for Demon Hunters, which I want to bring this up because it is a set I am actually working for. I'm trying to make a pet build for my Demon Hunter. This one I specifically mentioned because it's got a nice set bonus with 4 pieces. It summons all your companions. At 6 pieces, it allows your sentries to cast Hatred Spenders. They've doubled the frequency, essentially, of when it casts Hatred Spenders. So your sentries should now use the spenders a lot more often. Now, they do say this is going to vary from which spenders that you put on your bar, but overall, you'll see a lot more change there. Also, the spenders cast by sentries should receive benefits from your elemental damage. So if you're going to build for the embodiment of the Marauder, you can go ahead and build with elements in mind. Alright, much like Crusader shields, level 70 Mojos for Witch Doctors should be rolling with higher damage ranges than the level 70 Magic and Rares. So Mojos, this should also be retroactive. So Witch Doctors, if you have a Mojo that's legendary, take a look at it. You might want to see if your damage has gone up. This change also affects wizards in the form of level 70 legendary orbs, so they will now roll with higher damage ranges than the 70 magic and rare orbs, and is also retroactive. Alright, there have been some changes to the wizard's Archon ability, and so the Archon abilities now have some elemental effects. So the Veer's Astonishing Aura set that gives the Archon every rune is going to function a little bit differently now. They probably didn't do this because they did earlier in an earlier patch because they weren't sure how to handle this, but now they've finally got it working. Apparently now, if you have that set which combines all the runes, the elemental damage of your Archon will now be chosen based on the highest plus percentage of elemental damage type you have. So it will automatically pick the best elemental damage ability that you have, as long as Archon can use that elemental damage, which I do believe it has one of every type now. On to general bug fixes. Ladies and gentlemen, this is one that I know a lot of people have been looking at because this has been a major thorn in people's sides because damage just wasn't where it should have been for some people. The plus percentage of damage on weapons should now correctly apply all plus percentage elemental types of damage instead of just physical. So it used to be if you had a weapon that had plus 5% damage or something like that on it, it would only affect it if it was a black weapon, is what a lot of people like to call it. A weapon with no elemental on it at all. It's simply physical. Now it should affect all weapons, and so all your weapon damages should be where they're supposed to be. And again, this is retroactive. This is not going to be needing a new roll or a new legendary or whatever to drop. A few more general changes here as far as bug fixes are concerned is there's an issue that was fixed that could sometimes cause bracers to roll a critical chance of fix. That was far below its level range. During enchanting, they fixed an issue that allowed several auto-casted legendary item powers to trigger proc effects, and they fixed an issue that allowed legendary items to roll from higher stat ranges than were appropriate for their level. On to adventure mode. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the big news because this is going to change essentially how you farm, or at least it should. Alright, Heraldric caches now have an increased chance to drop legendary items on Torment 2 through 6. Now, it should be stated that, as far as I know so far, the Heraldric caches are still based on where you find them, not where you open them. So while the legendary chance to drop on Heraldric caches has been increased, and you will get the same legendary drop chance in your caches that you would have gotten if you were on that Torment difficulty, it should only drop for the Torment difficulty that you earned it on, not going into Torment 6 and then opening it there. So don't think you're going to go through normal mode, get yourself a whole bunch of caches, open them on Torment 6, and have an increased chance of it. It should not work that way, unless there's an outstanding bug that I haven't heard about yet. This one seems a little odd and almost out of place. Bounty rewards. The rewards for Hell bounties in Act 4 have actually been lowered. So I guess Act 4 for Hell difficulty was outperforming. Interesting. Not sure how to take that one. That's just kind of a minor change. Alright, we'll move on from that one. Kadala. This is the other major change. Kadala can now drop Torment-only legendary items. So you can gamble for set pieces now. I like this change myself because I am specifically looking for set items, and I was running out of things to gamble for because I have a legendary in nearly every slot on my Demon Hunter. Now, you will also be given weapon types that your character can equip, and an emphasis will be placed on class-specific weapon types. So if you are a Demon Hunter, and you decide to go for a one-handed weapon, the chances that it will be a one-handed crossbow should be very high. Now, you will still get, from time to time, one-handed weapons that you can equip, and you can equip axes and swords and things like that, so be aware. Speaking of gambling, they've increased the number of blood shards that can drop from Heraldric caches now. And the number of blood shards that are dropped by Rift Guardians on Torment 2 and above will increase with each level of difficulty. So if you like to farm rifts and you like to be on higher Torment levels, you will get more blood shards for being on those higher levels. So not only do you have an increased chance of finding your legendaries because you're already on a higher Torment, but you'll have more shards to gamble with and have more chances at finding that loot that you want. Alright, now that we've covered that, there is one small thing here that I'd like to point out isn't in these patch notes that was talked about at length. It was suggested that Heraldric caches were going to get Torment-only legendaries in their loot table. It would appear that they've backed off on that, and they haven't done it. My assumption is that rather than add Torment-specific legendaries to Heraldric caches, they decided to do this through the increased number of blood shards, which you then give to Kadala, who, in turn, has Torment-only legendaries in her loot table now. It's a little bit of an odd roundabout way to do it, I think, but it kind of makes sense. I think this is in an effort to make sure that Heraldric caches still have a fairly high chance of getting the specific legendaries that only those caches can provide. If you start increasing the loot table, even with these set pieces, that's more items that can possibly roll on maybe the ones that you wanted. So I imagine that might be the workaround for that, because Kadala still does not drop cache-only items. So if you want items that were specific to your Heraldric caches for specific acts, you still need to go to the acts to get them. If you want Torment-only legendaries, you either need to be in Torment or gambling with Kadala. So it's an interesting change. I was kind of staring at that for a while, wondering what had happened there, and it kind of makes sense when you kind of put that into context there. Okay, let's move on to crafting, because this is great. Some really nice changes here that I know will at least improve my quality of life. So they've greatly increased the drop rate of legendary crafting plans. So we already know that these plans are pretty nice, but you still need to have the right items to get them. You find the plans, you still need to find the legendary crafting materials. Downside there is, 9 times out of 10, you've probably found some of the materials before you found the plans. Or you may have found plans and the materials you have to go somewhere out of your way to farm, and you may not want to do that. I know I have a plan that I have to go farm Whimsyshire for. And unfortunately, at this point, the plans are useless to me. I don't really need it anymore, so I'm probably not going to farm Whimsyshire. But that being said, now we're going to get the legendary plans more often. And I don't think that's a bad idea. Because the plans, you know, those are something you still have to work for even after you found them. So allowing those to open up to more people, I don't think is going to make or break anything. Now, speaking of plans, the Reaper's Wraps should now drop when Malthael is killed at level 60 or higher every time now, instead of just only on the first kill. So let's say you accidentally missed them, or they dropped, you didn't pick it up, or something like that. So you're going to get your Reaper's Wraps. You're going to get your plan at least, so that should happen. The big quality of life change here when it comes to crafting, though, is that legendary crafted recipes no longer require specific common armors or weapons, and instead now require common crafting materials. I am happy for this change, because I have been holding on to white pieces of armor and weaponry in anticipation for making certain items, and farming weapon racks and armor packs out of Act 5 was not exactly the most interesting thing to do. So now you don't have to go out and specifically find those items. I mean, it was kind of a hunt, but honestly I think it was kind of this pointless thing, because you have to go out and try and find this white item for these things. You know, I'm just happy because now I have tons of white crafting materials, and now I can finally make some of the set pieces I wanted to make without having to go out and spend hours finding the specific piece of armor. I could have the legendary crafting material and have an easier time of finding certain legendary crafting materials than I could finding some of these white items, because there's so many of them. I'm very happy for this change. Now, I mentioned before that they were helping us with gold flow. Here's the other part of that. For the jeweler, Sovereign rings and amulets now require Marquise gems instead of Imperial gems. That's not exactly a gold thing, but that is a quality of life change for the jeweler. You're now going to be using Marquise gems, which drop far more often, which actually can translate back into gold, because the more Imperial gems you have, the less expensive it is to make higher level gems. Beyond that, the unsocketing cost for the top tier gems have been reduced. At the Flawless Imperial level, it's not that high. It goes from 150k to 125k, so you're saving 25k gold there. It really starts to pick up, though, at Royal and Flawless Royal. At Royal, you are no longer spending 250,000 gold to unsocket. It's only 150,000. And Flawless Royal is going down from 500,000, 500,000, my goodness, to 175k. So it's going up 25k every level, 125, 150, 175. So it should be a lot easier to remove your highest level gems from your gear if you need to. For the Mystic, it should no longer be possible for the same affix to be randomly selected as the replacement for both of your new rolls. Hallelujah! Now, I didn't mind the Mystic rolling the same stat as what I had just tried to roll out, because there was a chance it could be higher. That's good. But when it gives me two of the same stat for a stat I'm already trying to replace, that's annoying. So I'm glad to see that change as well. When you're enchanting an item, the original affix will now be forced into the pool of possible replacement affixes. This will allow legendary items with affixes that are normally unavailable on a slot to roll for that affix when enchanting. So you might be wondering, what does that exactly mean? Well, I talked earlier about Wind Force. Wind Force has a secondary stat that causes knockback, but that stat isn't the legendary affix. It's just a secondary stat, but it's a secondary stat that doesn't typically exist on a weapon. By putting Wind Force into the enchanter now, and I tried to re-roll that knockback, let's say, I have a chance of re-rolling that knockback now. Before, I could only roll from the common pool of affixes that a bow could roll from. So if I tried to replace that knockback, I would basically be removing it, because I couldn't possibly get it back. Now, if I get, say, a poor roll on the knockback effect, and I want to increase it, I can put it into the Mystic, and hope maybe she gives me an increase on it. Alright, for those of you who like to level up in adventure mode, it looks like they're allowing you to have your followers at level 1 in adventure mode. That's honestly kind of a minor change for a lot of us that have been playing for a while, but I think that's a pretty good one for people that maybe have picked up the game for the first time. Maybe they've beaten it for one character, they want to play other characters, but they don't want to do the story. This way they can have their followers right away, right at the very beginning, and I really think that's useful because the density in adventure mode is a bit higher, so it's nice to be able to have a follower there to help you out. They have nerfed the Templar, though, speaking of followers. His Inspire ability, and this is specifically for Crusaders, the Wrath generation has been reduced from 1.8 down to 1.1. Changes to monsters. Big one here, Chiltara will now spawn more often. That's great because that's one of the monsters you really have to kill in order to get the Staff of Hurting, and with a lot of new players coming into the game, a lot of them might want to be able to visit the land of sparkling sunshine and ponies. They've made some changes to some of the effects for monsters as well. They're saying that champions and rares no longer spawn with 4 of the following monster affixes, and the frequency at which they can spawn has been reduced a bit. So they've basically nerfed monsters overall, elites. They've put all of these into kind of a category together. You've got Arcane Enchanted, Desecrator, Fire Chains, Frozen Pulse, Molten, Mortar, Orbiter, Plagued, Poison Enchanted, and Wormhole. So you're only going to ever get 3 of those at any one given time, and you shouldn't get 4. And that should be a little bit more rare, too, that you get that. Should also be noted that champions and rares should no longer be able to spawn with both Plagued and Desecrator at the same time. So that's an addendum to that previous list. Alright, let's get the last of the patch notes done so we can get to the class changes. User interface. Friends who are currently playing Diablo 3 will appear at the top of your list. That's quite nice. Legendary items received from Kadala will now be broadcast to your clan, so I guess that can be nice if you like that kind of thing, so that you can have the automatic announcement rather than when you're just finding them. Elite kill messages will now also appear in single-player games. Some bug fixes. They prevented an issue, which was preventing the icons for health wells and pools of reflection from properly updating on the minimap. That's been something they've been struggling with for a bit, it seems. Fix the issue that could sometimes cause the icons on the minimap to display their unusable state when players were temporarily unable to use them, such as when using Steed Charge. They fixed an issue that could prevent your cursor from being displayed in full screen mode if high DPI was detected. Interesting. Bug fixes. Issue was fixed that could cause lag for clan members when a large amount of legendary items were identified via the Book of Cain. See, I knew that book would be the death of you. Fixed an issue that allowed players to continue to send requests to start boss encounters after one had already been sent to the group. Fix an issue preventing resource cost reduction from being considered when determining whether or not you have the minimum resources necessary to cast a spell. Oh, that's nice. That's kind of down here in the little bug fixes, but that's actually really nice. For those of you who don't know, I mean, what that basically means is, say you were building with resource reduction gear or Paragon points. If you've got a spell that requires, say, 50 mana and you're at 49 mana, obviously you can't cast it. But let's say you had resource reduction gear, and that spell should only cost you 40 mana. Well, you're at 49 mana. You should be able to cast it and have 9 left over. But the game doesn't see that. The game doesn't activate the skill unless you meet the minimum requirements for that spell. And then after it's triggered the spell, will it then take the cost reduction into effect and then actually take the amount required? This is honestly terrible for people that have a lot of that cost reduction, because it can basically prevent you from casting a few last spells there at the end, or maybe something that might save you, just because the game is calculating it in the wrong order. And of course, lastly, they fixed an issue that could sometimes cause teleport powers to prevent quests from progressing. Really? Interesting.